Hi, welcome to our channel Good New. Following the Russian-Ukrainian war, the United States enacted sweeping restrictions and export controls, including a ban on the sale of certain high-tech commodities to Russia, including high-end semiconductor equipment. The European Union responded very immediately, and Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, and others quickly followed suit. The US also told the media that if Chinese firms do not comply with US export laws on Russia, they will be denied access to US industrial equipment and software. As the US continues to cut off semiconductor supplies to Russia, pressure on Russian chipmakers grows. It is difficult to design, develop, and manufacture modern CPUs and other integrated circuits without using American hardware and software, as Russia is now cut off. Will the United States' severe limitations on chip shipments to Russia harm Russia's economy? Will Russia's economy suffer since 90% of its chips are imported from Europe, the United States, and other countries? Russia imports which countries and types of chips? According to a recent assessment of Russian chip import statistics, Russia purchased around $40 million in bulk chips in the first half of 2021. The year before the new crown epidemic, Russia's chip imports were about $60 to $70 million. This amount of data is insignificant in compared to the global semiconductor sector, which is valued around $550 billion. Russia, in instance, uses less than 0.1% of the global semiconductor sector, which is worth around $500 million each year. This illustrates that Russia's advancement is not reliant on semiconductors. Will the effect be minor if these critical chips cannot be imported? Of course not. It's a pittance in relation to the global chip market, and it has no bearing on the Russian industry. It is necessary for growth. Russia's military force is strong, and it does not necessitate the use of imported chips. The vast majority of chips imported by Russia from other nations are utilized in automobiles, industrial equipment, and motor control chips. Because, aside from the military, the majority of Russia's economy is centered on heavy industry. According to Willy Shih, a Harvard Business School professor, a significant share of Russia's imported chips are analog semiconductors used in industrial equipment and items like switches and motor controllers, and these chips are largely supplied by American and European firms. According to customs data, Infineon, Integra, Mitsubishi, Semicron, ABB, Fuji, AMPLEON, On Semiconductor, ST Vishay, and others have the highest import value in Russia from 2017 to 2021. Infineon, ABB, AMPLEON, and ST are European corporations, Integra, On Semiconductor, and Vishay are American companies, while Mitsubishi and Fuji are Japanese companies. Furthermore, Russia will obtain components from TI and ADI, the two biggest analog chip manufacturers in the United States, through distributors in Dubai and abroad. Memory, like analog chips, accounts for a sizable portion of Russian imports. In the first 7 months of 2021, Russia imported memory chips worth roughly $50 million, and the annual import volume is expected to reach close to $75 million. According to Import Genius data, Russia purchases the most memory chips from Samsung each year, for over $15 million. Based on Russia's previous chip imports, primarily from Europe and the United States, mainland China, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, and other countries and regions, China continues to export chips to Russia, despite the fact that Europe, the United States, Japan, South Korea, and other countries have imposed export controls on them. There might also be problems with the aspect. It is clear that purchasing chips such as analog, controller, and power, or chip devices for industrial control and automobiles, will be difficult for Russia. Why is Russia's military so powerful, and what are its shortcomings? Russian consumer and industrial chips continue to fare poorly. Everyone has said that Russia's military might is fearsome. Although the majority of Russia's chips are imported, Russia is capable of producing its own military chips. As a result, Russia is worried about the US export restrictions on military electronics. Yes, in this sense. During the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, the early days of integrated circuit technology happened. Given the possibility of a nuclear assault, the Soviet Union preferred electron tube technology over transistor technology because of its superior radiation resistance. Later, the He-excited crystal oscillator was successfully created on the basis of this technology. An other stimulated crystal oscillator is an externally excited intermediate frequency integrator. It accomplishes middle frequency coherent accumulation utilizing extremely simple analog circuit technology, as opposed to today's high-end CPUs. Despite being substantially larger than high-end circuits, the heteroexcited crystal oscillator has extraordinarily high stability, which is why Russia stresses its use in the military industry. In terms of consumption, Russia seems indifferent about getting sanctioned by chips. The semiconductor industry is a typical capital-intensive industry requiring large-scale, long-term investment. However, due to persistent domestic and global issues, Russia's private sector is struggling to create its own consumer electronics enterprises, such as mobile phones and tablets. Russia has already tried to get into this market. Yoga Devices released a smartphone with a dual-sided screen that allows for e-book reading. However, the company declared bankruptcy in 2019 owing to poor operations. According to studies, Russia's purchases in the semiconductor terminal business account for just around 2% of global computer and smartphone sales. Russia continues to prioritize the military sector, while the civilian sector relies significantly on finished products imports. Military and consumer chips are unaffected or dependent on chip prohibitions. However, 90% of Russia's chips are imported, and the vast majority of these imported chips are expected to be used in industry. What happens if Russia is unable to obtain chips? Russia's industry will suffer as a result of chip shortage if chips cannot be obtained. Previous U.S. sanctions against Russia did, in fact, have an impact on Russian enterprises. MICPO and ARCTPAM are now Russia's two largest integrated circuit manufacturers. The former has a 65 to 250 nanometer process technology, whilst the latter has an 8-inch wafer fab and a 90 to 250 nanometer process technology. These two companies primarily provide military, aerospace, and industrial equipment. The U.S. Department of Commerce placed ARCTPAM on the sanctions list in 2016 during the procurement of necessary components from AMD to upgrade the production process at a Zelenograd plant, requiring the transaction to be suspended. As a result, the company was in debt and on the verge of going bankrupt. Later, HNNME, formerly known as the Institute of Electronics of the former Soviet Union, and the Russian government collaborated with ARCTPAM's largest creditor, the Russian State Development Group VEB.RF, to declare bankruptcy and restructure the company. According to the U.S. Semiconductor Sector Association, the Russian semiconductor export prohibition is unlikely to have long-term consequences for the chip industry. Russia contributed for less than 0.1% of global semiconductor purchases, according to the SIA, using World Semiconductor Trade Statistics (WSTS) data. According to the U.S. Semiconductor Sector Association, the Russian semiconductor export prohibition is unlikely to have long-term consequences for the chip industry. Russia contributed for less than 0.1% of global semiconductor purchases, according to the SIA, using World Semiconductor Trade Statistics (WSTS) data. Finally, I believe Russia is not afraid of sanctions, and there is another reason why Russia may seek to other countries rather than the United States or the European Union for chips. Today, the U.S. sets nearly entire restrictions on chip exports to Russia, and Russia's chip imports may face more obstacles in the future. As a consequence, scientific and technological progress must follow objective norms, not blindly reject others, and master its own core technology at the same time. Furthermore, even if the theoretical foundation is solid, technology is only a castle in the air in the absence of a complete industrial system. Thanks for watching in this video. You can add your ideas or suggestions below. Please keep following our channel and like our videos.